I am back with Dr. Benjamin Freud for part 2 of our conversation. If you have not listened to part 1, pause this episode, go back, listen, and then join this conversation. For part 2, we are going more in depth with the Bird Lab, into what assessment can look like if we ditch the rubric, and into what it really means for education to be regenerative. Again, I do not expect you to agree with all of Ben's points. Both part 1 and part 2 this week are intended to cultivate confidence, provoke dialogue, and explore fresh thinking about what's possible in our world of education. This is Schoolutions, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that isn't just theory, but practical, try-it-tomorrow approaches for educators and caregivers to ensure every student finds their spark and receives the support they need to thrive. Welcome back, listeners. I am so excited to be here with Dr. Benjamin Freud. If you have not listened to part 1 of our conversation, you must pause this, go back and listen, and then return right where you left off to join for part 2. Benjamin, it has been absolutely fascinating to hear your passion, to feel your passion, I will say. You truly believe in this work that you are doing. You're in Bali at the Green School. Part 2 of our conversation, we're going to go more in depth with the Bird Lab and the biomimicry work you're doing. And I also want to go back to something you mentioned in part 1 around assessment and what you see assessment as. I know it is not rubrics. It is not projects sitting in Google Drive, as many of our kids are experiencing right now. So welcome back, and start us off. Take us to a day in the Bird Lab with students at the Green School.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear that the Bird Lab's still being built. So we are learning about how to do this as we go along. So we're super excited about what that space is going to be, but we're considering a lab, not just a physical space, but how we're learning already in the classroom. So it's going to be like even better next year. So what we have been doing there is really going through an approach to learning that involves encounters. And those are like words, uh, that we have brought from post-humanist philosophy, but it's this idea, just to make it very simple, that we have 4 S's: sensing, seeking, shaping, storytelling. And it's not linear. You can like layer 2, 3, 4 on, you go back and forth. They're just kind of like these signals out there. Sensing is really trying to figure out what's going on, like walking around, getting a sense through your body, sensing about what is there, but also listening to the voices of others, including the other than human. From there, we seek by asking big questions. Now, this is also super important in terms of regenerative work. Regeneration is not a model, and it's not something that you could replicate somewhere else. What we do here in Bali in this moment can only happen in response to this moment and in Bali. In the States or somebody in the Siberia, it doesn't really matter. As soon as you're saying, how could we do this model elsewhere? It's not regenerative. That's an IKEA box approach to education. And so we ask questions that can't be transported elsewhere. So, for instance, let's say I don't know. I'm making this up as I go along, but let's say let's design a space for learning and playing, which are the same thing, but learning and playing that I don't know that takes into account all living things be safe. I mean, I'm making it up. Like it would certainly be much more interesting. That, but let's just say that would look in one aspect in Bali because of the particular conditions in Bali. And it will look somewhere different in Paris or in South Africa. But the question remains the same. And that's where the seeking is. How can we ask a question that makes sense in place that can be transported elsewhere with a different response and then learn from one another? Shaping is just like shaping, doing, learning from the living world. That's where we kind of get our hands dirty, our fingers dirty. And storytelling is super important because we tell the stories of how we have done things to others, and they tell their stories, and we become inspired by one another, like creating constellations. So through sensing, seeking, shaping, and storytelling, it's an approach to just about anything that can be done. But what it really wants to do is decenter us as users, as people, as humans, as individuals, and starting to think about how this resonates, how this implicates, how this is complicit within a larger participation of members of the community, human and other than human. to the point where after a while you just stop even saying that because you just kind of live
Live
it
it.
as a participant.
Yeah, yeah. That it's so beautiful, and I appreciate that storytelling is an aspect of the thinking because stories are what unite us and inspire us to get outside of our own selves and to really be curious and to lean in and ask questions. And so I just this work, when I read about it, I paused and I spent days researching just you as a human, but also the ripple effects that this is having and the potential. Um, because I think, again, you said something in part one, it's not just about preparing kids, it's shifting the way we experience life as adults as well. And I just, I've lost a bit of hope for grown-ups these days. I do enjoy being around kids because of their curiosity, but I also gravitate to grown-ups that are curious and want to explore and reshape and rethink, and lean into that. A huge part of what keeps cranking our education system forward, it feels, especially in the States, is assessment. And if we talk about state testing and all of those nuances, but you have made it very clear that rubrics are just what's wrong with education, and so many teachers and students use rubrics. Can you say more to that?
Yeah, and it's really about confusing ends and means. And this is like I have nothing against rubrics. I do if they're the end, and if that's like the tick box of a rubric that is what gives you a grade. So let's kind of think about the legibility of this system and what we're going for. When you have mastery, competency, grades, whatever, regents exam, whatever you want, you're putting a letter or a number on paper and reifying it, making it so that that is the learning that's there. But really it's a snapshot in time. And this is nothing new. Lots of people have said this, but
Yeah.
let's think about what that means. It's like what you have learned can be transported and brought anywhere. I can take my transcript in Santa Fe and move to, Johannesburg, and it's supposed to be relevant, but it's not. It's just a way not to do anything with learning, but it's a sorting mechanism. It's a way to really help the person who sorts. And it doesn't take into account the dynamic nature of learning. It doesn't take into account how it was done in this place at this time under these conditions. But worse, it emphasizes, and this is where rubric goes, it emphasizes the static nature of assessment. Assessment's okay. We're always assessing. Like right now, I'm looking at the screen, and if you were falling asleep, I would kind of like assess myself saying that it's not very, very good, right? So
Right.
we're always measuring and assessing. That's not the issue. It's just a question of when we do it in order to get to a standard finality that we think that could be reproduced, that's problematic. So the idea of story is beautiful to me as a form of measuring learning quantitatively, qualitatively, and post qualitatively. And let me kind of go here because stories are dynamic. Unless they're from rote memorization, they're always the same. And even then, they're not the same because the conditions change, including the listener, the weather, the sound, right? When the bards used to go around telling, talk about Beowulf, the story changes because the weather changes, the people change. So even that is insane. So stories are dynamic. There's antagonist, protagonist, plot twist, different voices. There's so many books bring up the same story through different perspective. To me, the best way, sorry, let me rephrase that. To me, the way to get us out of this static, standardized, mechanistic mess is to bring in stories and the different perspectives of community. So when we do learning and doing, when we learn and we do and we do and we learn as part of the same process, that Movius strip I talked about in part one, how does the work that we do, how has that been felt by other community members, human and other than human? How has that changed and moved them? So let me give you an example that's very concrete. I don't need a rubric to tell me that Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech is fantastic. I feel it in my body. I feel it in that time. I get chills because it's so powerful. He's such a good speaker. Same thing with with music. I don't need a rubric to tell me if a piece of music moves me. And that might be
You get
different for
chills.
taste, but that's okay. You get chills. It's an embodied, effective experience. But if I'll challenge your listeners to go on Google or whatever search engine they use, and type in rubric for presentation and pick a random number 1 to 100. And the rubric that will pop up, I will put my hand on the fire for this, is can you project your voice? Do you have graphics? Have you substantiated your claims? Like, that's garbage because it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in a presentation is, have you moved your audience? Have you called them to action? Have they changed? The only thing that matters in a book is, has it moved your reader? There's a relationship there. And
Yeah.
and it's about like how that goes out. My dissertation for my PhD, I think was pretty awesome. I loved it. Nobody's read it. Nobody's read it. Now, maybe because it's too esoteric, but my point is that it hasn't necessarily moved the world. Now, that could be another topic, but you see what I'm saying? Like, we can't keep it individualized in the work. And that's what these projects that are kept on the Google Drive do. That's what these rubrics that say that, whether or not you have a linking sentence is the finality does. The linking sentence is put to the service of moving the audience. The projecting your voice is put to the service of getting your audience to say, wow, I never thought of that. And it's the means, not the ends. Just like mastery and skills and all that stuff. It's not about like getting a tick box that you demonstrated creativity in a particular time and space that's never going to be replicated. That's a means to get to another end. And so, just to end this really quickly, it's not that weird, because anybody who has a job right now, when they do their resume, their CV, puts on, I have increased sales by 100%. I got these testimonials. I was able to do this, that. They are already talking about this. They already see it in terms of how has the work affected and changed conditions. So why are we doing things differently in schools? It makes no sense. It individualizes. It's competition, and it just doesn't make any sense in the world how something that was done in 2026 will have any relevance in 2031.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back as well to the teacher I mentioned in part one that really is working hard to explore why. And that, again, if you think of the neocortex versus the limbic of where feeling is in our brain, you getting to that, the heart and the feeling and moving and inspiring people when they understand the why behind, or even have a glimpse into it as learners, they are much more able to transfer that whatever information they're receiving, because their mind is opened in a different way. And I think the idea of having an impact on the community, and that it's a great responsibility, but it's also a beautiful piece to be gathered together in learning. And that to me is where I hope we go, as a world of, it's not just about me. So I am very inspired by the work you've done with coconut thinking, and just thinking of emergent learning or the idea of a learning dialogist. Will you
Mhm,
will
mhm.
you identify that?
Yeah, I could do two things at once here. I don't like necessarily the word consultant. It means to bring together, but nowadays it's all about bringing people together so that you have somebody who drops in, says a bunch of stuff, probably repeating what you've said, and then moves on with their lives and collects a big fat check. Um,
Yep.
so for me, dialogist really talks about the dialogue and really listening and exchanging and probably having a flatter hierarchy. It's all about what that might look like, what it might look like to exchange ideas, to bounce ideas, to respond to one another, so that the dialogist on either side, because at this point, the people that we're encountering are also going to be in that dialogist mode, like we are both as flat. We learn from each other. The expert consultant who flies in, says stuff on a PowerPoint, and moves out without learning from the environment, it's just not on. So I just wanted to distinguish that. And so it goes along with emergent learning, and this goes back to the rubrics. This idea that we create these curriculums that are set in stone, and that every year is the same thing, and that we get to this one output that we know of, is violent. It's violent to children. It is epistemologically violent. It is not how learning is. It saps kids from any kind of responsibility to place. So emergent learning is just like the living world. Um, Again, it's not the Wild West, but it is wild. I like to say that, right? Because because people say, "Oh, they can do whatever they want," but no, they can't.
No.
Because in the natural world, a I don't know, a cat is born with certain DNA structure, and it can take on different shapes and sizes and personalities. But if the DNA is not there, it will die. The natural world will make sure that the cat dies, right? And so you've got these borders, I guess, or these guardrails of possibilities, and anything that could happen within that happens not just due to the DNA, but also the conditions for growth. Were they well fed? Did they get water? Did they have a kitty that loved? Were on the street, things like that. And so that's what emergent learning is. We start with we have a trajectory. We know what problem we're trying to local problem we're trying to respond to, but we don't know what that's going to be. We don't know what that's finally going to look like. Even if we're saying like we want to build a water structure. So I'll give you an example. So the eighth grade students here last year built a water structure as part of their math class and gifted it to the early years. So it was like a project voucher. Like we kind of knew that that was going to happen. That could have changed if the students said, we don't want to do this, we want something else. But I guess they went with it. But we didn't know really what that would look like, what the problems would look like, where it would be put, how the kids would, the early years kids would resonate. So that was emergent. Having conversations like you were saying about your friend about the moon, she didn't know what that would look like. They might have rejected it, but she went with it and it emerged and their feeling came out and that changed the experience as well. So we just need to be open to the fact that let's just see what happens and be okay with that because we're still kind of knowing where we're going because we've got these guardrails. But let's let the students participate, the young learners participate in the experience so that they can shape it as well. And then again, we're learning together. And whether or not you hit such and such standard, eh, like yes, great, be amazing. But how you do that is a different, and it's not as important as the relationships that we build and the learning that goes a lot deeper and stays for a lot longer.
You're walking my mind. I was just about to ask around standards because you've mentioned guardrails, but the guardrails feel to me, if I'm interpreting what you're saying, much more of the problems that we're trying to explore in the community and solve together, not the standards. The standards aren't the guardrails. And I think there's a misstep when we think of standards or standardized education, that is the goal of what we're trying to plan by and reach. But those standards mean very little to students if we ground them and intertwine them with an issue that they see in their backyard or in their community. It gives such purpose behind that number and letter code on a piece of paper. Um, and there's also something that comes to community because standards are designed with vertical and horizontal alignment. So, how beautiful that we could say to a child, look, this is the way we unpacked this learning or lens of learning last year. This is the new lens we're looking at it through to solve this new emerging problem within our community. So I that layer of your work was fascinating to me, and I'm so glad that you just brought that to light. I want to end the conversation with not just speaking to the 2030 that you have, but also I want to ask you the question to complete the sentence. Education will be regenerative when?
Education will be regenerative when it stops having goals to be regenerative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just stop. It's a goal, linear, we need to get there kind of thing. When regeneration, we never know where life's going to end up. Uh, and life has trajectories. It doesn't have um, paths to goals. And we will, we will, we just have to stop thinking in terms of solutions and goals.
Um, I am so grateful that you took the time. It is now 7:40 my time at night, and then I'm guessing I'm trying to think of the time, 8:40 AM where you are,
That's right.
Friday?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, there we go. It looks much warmer where you are. I'm very jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a balmy 45 today, and it was just
Oh my
dreamy,
gosh.
so, yeah, it's chilly out. But I very, very intentionally reached out to you because I think the way you are living and breathing in this world is having an impact in ways on children, but the adults, I'm sure, there as well. And we can take so much from what you're doing as a mindset and inspiration for what we do every day to show up in the States tomorrow in classrooms. It doesn't mean that all the schools are going to become progressive or micro schools. That's not what I'm saying. But just that layer of community learning around, what is the purpose behind the learning that we are offering to children and inspiring them with, and seeking out problems in the community and coming up with ways of not solving those problems, but addressing them in really thoughtful ways. So I'm grateful for your time and the work you're doing.
Well, thanks for the great questions, and really, I appreciate this podcast, and I can't wait to like subscribe and hear more. So thank you for the work you're doing as well.
Yeah, take care. After listening to part 2 of the conversation, I am hoping you feel like it was an expansive, challenging, and genuinely moving dialogue. You can explore Dr. Benjamin Freud's work and the incredible Green School Bali community, a school without walls, rooted in bamboo, and big ideas, at the links in the show notes. If you're an educator, sit with the birdhouse example. Ask yourself about the last project your students completed. Who did it serve? Where did it go when it was over? If you're a school leader, reach out to Coconut Thinking. Start a real conversation about what it would mean to redesign from the roots. If you're a parent or caregiver, ask your child's school not how are grades determined, but how does my child's learning contribute to something beyond themselves? And for everyone that listened, follow Benjamin's writing at coconutthinking.com. Engage, challenge, respond. Regenerative education doesn't happen in one school. It happens when a community decides together that it matters. And now I want to plant a seed for next week. Civics educator and doctoral researcher Colleen O'Brien joins me to reveal why civic apathy is actually a confidence problem, and how the right classroom experiences can transform students into active participants. From Supreme Court insights to student voting booth moments, this conversation will absolutely change the way you think about civic education at every age. I cannot wait to share it with you. Schoolutions podcast is created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who creates the music playing in the background. You can follow and listen to Schoolutions wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to never miss an episode and watch on YouTube. Thank you to my guest, Dr. Benjamin Freud, for showing us what regenerative education looks like in action. Please reach out to me at oliviawall.com if you'd like a thought partner to help you cultivate curious learners who advocate for what they believe in. Don't forget to tune in every Monday and Friday for part 1 and part 2 of my guest conversations with the best evidence-based, classroom-ready strategies you can apply right away to better the lives of the children in your care. Your 60-second bite-sized piece of learning from our conversation will be waiting for you on Wednesdays to share with a colleague. Take care, and thank you for forever getting better with me. See you next week.